I'm gonna dive in as people are filtering in. Looks like we already have a pretty good crowd. Um, Today we're gonna dive into what makes a website and more specifically a WordPress site really work and be an asset for your firm. The title is a site that works as hard as you. You know, we all know we have hardworking teams, hardworking organizations. So this webinar is about how to make sure your website's working as hard as you and your team. So while people are filtering in, I'm just gonna introduce myself. Eleanor's joining us. Thank you, Eleanor. I'll introduce Eleanor as well. A little bit about me. So I'm Peter. I'm the CEO here at Brassbound. I got my start in private equity. So I was started my career as a marketing director, marketing coordinator. You know, I worked all the way up to really being CMO of a private equity firm that was acquiring businesses, and I was in charge of redoing the websites, redoing the digital campaigns for growth to make sure that they were working as hard as the executive teams, as hard as the employees towards the mission of the organizations. So it let me do a lot of different things: websites, digital campaigns, branding exercises. So it was a really good start to transition to what I've been doing now. As it relates to WordPress, this might date myself. I don't know if Eleanor knows I've been working with it this long, but I started working with WordPress 15 years ago. Kiri, our senior developer, she's been working with WordPress for over 15 years, ever since she was a teenager, just turned a teenager. Um, it's come a long way since then. It's come a long, long way since then. I know a lot of you on this call know that as well because you work with WordPress every day. So about Brassbound, we're based out of Greater Portland, um, branding and advertising firm. Really specialize in working with organizations with 200 and under employees. We just like working with smaller businesses, like working with regional businesses as well. And at any given time, we're working on 6 to 8 websites. I'd say. Would you say that, Eleanor?
Yep, I'd say about that many. Mhm.
Just to introduce Eleanor, everyone's favorite account manager. Um, she is our account manager, project manager. Started her career at Apple, worked at some larger agencies in Philly. We were lucky enough to recruit her to our team. So thanks for joining us, Eleanor. Kiri could not make it. She really wanted to, but she had something today. And combined in our team, I think we have over like 50 years of experience with WordPress. So um, we're WordPress nerds. It's something we talk a lot about. Even participate in WordCamp as well. Um, so just to go through a little bit about what we're going to talk about today with webinars, I like to start with a challenge. Why are we even talking about this? So we're going to frame the challenge. I have some stats just to get the juices flowing. Then we're going to go into branding and messaging. And I just a note here, I have a lot to go through. And Eleanor suggested I go through some of these a little fast today because we do try to keep them to 40 minutes. Um, so we are going to start with the heavier hitting one, branding, and that's we're kind of going in the order of how we think about building websites here. We're going to talk about user experience and information architecture, go into psychology of websites. Then spend some time on SEO. We're going to talk about on page, but off page as well. Performance and scalability. This is a one that has a lot of low hanging fruit. And then some talk about conversion and lead capture. And then at the end, just some, practical fixes. If you find yourself overwhelmed at the end of this, we're going to give you a couple practical fixes that we think you can implement. And we're trying to have this webinar for an audience of, we always have some marketing directors on here, but we also have some executives that maybe have never gone through a website redesign. Just to start framing the challenge of why are we having this webinar? Why are we talking about this? I just picked some stats that we've come across. The first one's from a Stanford Web Credibility Research study. And it found that 75% of users judge a company's credibility based off their website design. I'm sure everyone on this webinar knows that. Unfortunately, as humans, we judge a book by its cover, and we make those judgments incredibly quickly. We're going to talk about this in the psychology of web design. We're hardwired. We used to have to make decisions really fast, judgments really fast. So we all know we've landed on a website, maybe for a professional services firm, and we just felt like I don't know, it just didn't line up to the type of firm we were looking for. So we all know that impression. The next one I picked because it's on performance. Um, 53% of mobile users abandon a site that takes longer than 3 seconds to load. I am very surprised by that because 3 seconds is in 2025 seems like a lifetime. So that's just a huge drop off. We're going to be talking about performance, but think about that. If your website takes too long to load, if you haven't optimized your images, if they're not sized correctly, they're not compressed correctly. If your website takes long, 3 seconds, 53% of mobile users have already abandoned your site. The next one comes from WordStream. So look this company up if you do any advertising. They're a software for pay-per-click advertising, and they say the average website conversion rate is 2.35%, but top performing sites are 5.3. Now I picked this because if we have an average site right now, if we can just increase it to be a top performing site, that's over 100% increase in conversions. So just looking at what's possible by when we do take a look at our website and improve it. The last one, just from HubSpot, this is with SEO. 75% of users never scroll past the first page of search results. I'm surprised this isn't higher. I think if you're really looking for something special and maybe you had a tough time putting it into Google, maybe you will go to the second page. But SEO, we're going to talk about on page, off page, and technical SEO. They're so important for people to find you and for you to be in that first page of results. And we'll dig into some of this stuff when we talk about the psychology. So as far as what Eleanor and I see when clients come to us, I just wanted to talk to this to frame the challenge that clients and marketing teams and executives are up against. We see, performance and design limitations because people choose premium themes. Now, if you don't know what a premium theme is, a lot of websites, especially local websites, they're built off a theme that's put on a marketplace. So a developer sells it, and then other freelancers, developers can buy this theme and then customize it for their client's brand. Now, we're going to talk a little bit in branding about making sure something's not cookie cutter. But these themes, because they're kind of a one size fits all, they're not very intentionally designed, and they have a lot of performance issues because they're putting a lot of stuff in to make this a one size fits all, and it leads to a website with some issues, a bloated website, but also one that feels a little cookie cutter, doesn't have that intentionality. We see missed SEO opportunities, just the basics, just the basics on page SEO, HTML structure, meta titles, meta descriptions, putting alt tags in your images, naming your images correctly. We see just low hanging fruit with SEO a lot. Another big one, and I know Eleanor sees this when she leads our kickoff calls, but a disconnection between the website and the organization's culture and mission. So the website's saying one thing, and the company's grown or changed, and the culture and the mission, it's complete disconnect and no longer aligned. Maybe in the past they had capacity to bring more sales in, but really now they're trying to recruit, and their whole brand has changed since of that. So that's something that we see an awful lot. And I know for me, user journeys that haven't been thought through or mapped out, this is something that I'm a big proponent of. Not thinking how the user is going to go through the website. Maybe we're so ingrained in our business, we structure the information how we want to see it, but not as how the user's going to go through the website. So we'll talk about that more when we talk about user experience. So before we dig in, if anyone feels talk about mobile first, mobile ready, and accessibility is missing, it is missing from this discussion. And why it's missing is, these are just 2025. These are just things we have to be doing. We have to be designing mobile first, and we have to make sure that we're meeting all regulations when it comes to accessibility. Uh, Kiri on our team is an expert on accessibility, and Eleanor, I think I'm going to push her to have a whole webinar on this. But I made this slide to say, these are assumed that you're doing these things right now. We're not going to dig too far into them. If you're not, these are non-starter. These are things that we just have to be doing in 2025 when we build a website. Um, so if you are unfamiliar with these things, please look into them. Um, so we wanted to start about brand consistency and messaging. I tried to kind of start with some of the easier stuff and then work towards some of the things that we find clients struggle with. Um, so the first one is, I had a note here in my notes, and it's brand consistency is not just a logo in the corner. It's color, typography, photography, layout. When we're talking about brand consistency, we want to make sure all our visuals are consistent. And it goes back to credibility. There's just a feeling when it's done intentional and done right. So it's more than just having the right logo in the corner. It's making sure that we're using a brand color, we're using the right typography, we're using photography that speaks to our brand as well, and a layout that speaks to our brand as well. Maybe our brand's a little quirky, so we're gonna have a quirky layout, or maybe our brand's very serious, so we're gonna have a very well structured, intentional layout. Um, your brand personality needs to be a part of your layout, but it's really a non-starter to make sure that we have our brand colors, brand palette, the proper typography, photography, and layout. And I'm going to ask you in a second to kind of dig into your servers and find these old brand documents that you might have and dust them off when you're looking at your site. We talked about premium themes, and I have on here design with intentionality. Now, if it's a smaller site, if Eleanor and the team are making a smaller site, 5 pages, every single page is going to be um, custom designed, and there's going to be an intention behind each single page. With larger sites, you know, within WordPress, we make templates. So the template's going to be very intentional in how we do it, very well thought out with the user in mind, and not feeling, cookie cutter, not feeling like it was just a premium themed grabbed off the internet and customized. So being very intentional with our design. And we will go a little bit more into this with user experience. Um, but I wanted to mention that because sometimes I think we see when clients are coming to us, they haven't thought really intentionally about the design. Oh yeah, that looks good, but is it intentional? Does it live up? Does it match our brand personality? So that's something that we see. Now we're getting towards kind of the harder ones. Um, and that's brand your site in the brand foundation documents, your brand strategy, your brand voice, your brand story, your mission, vision, and values. Now, what I want to recommend is go through your server, find these, or if maybe you've recently done a rebrand, that's great because these documents are top at mind. But when we're looking at doing initiative with our website, we need to share these with all of the individuals involved, because the copy of the website needs to live up to our brand voice, needs to be injected in there, and the design really needs to match the personality of our brand, and we really want to be using our mission, vision, values, core values, and put that somewhere on the site. So go into the server, find these documents, dust them off. And the next thing is having a key stakeholder kickoff. For us, it's going to depend on the size of website, what type of meeting we have. We might have several discovery meetings, or it might just be, if it's a smaller website, a kickoff. Um, and if we have these documents, brand strategy, brand voice, mission, vision, and core values, maybe they're a little old. It's time to get all the stakeholders around, dust these off, look at them, talk about, what's changed. Has our brand strategy changed? Has our voice changed? Has our objectives changed? Has our mission changed? What's our vision? And really, updating these, and uh, making sure that they fit with our organization before we dig into the web process. So, um, branding and discovery is really the first step in the website process. Now, when it comes to messaging, from what I see, I know I put prioritize clarity over cleverness. Often we see too many messages out there with client websites. With messaging, less is more, and a lot of it comes from these core brand documents that we create. But it's very important with a website, and we'll get into this kind of with user experience a little bit, to keep the messaging focused. If we're a nonprofit, we have all these different great things that we're doing. Okay, well, what's the core message that we're trying to get across? And this is going to make a little bit more sense when we talk about psychology with websites. So I just had some notes as I was kind of going through this before. With messaging, um, your messaging, you want to speak always from the audience's perspective. We want to be solving the audience's problem. We don't want to be speaking from the perspective of our engineers or our accountants or our lawyers. We want to be speaking to the audience and meeting the audience where they are. And also with messaging, I think we all know this. We're all on our phones. We're all looking at things like Instagram Reels. Our attention spans are getting shorter. But when we look at a website, we're scanning. So make sure your core messaging is not just in the body copy of the website, but also in headlines. Um, and also, we want to inject our brand personality into messaging. I think that's something that our team here at Brassbound is really good at. So that's where those brand foundational brand documents are so important. Um, so before I dig in much further, we have a good group here. Um, Eleanor, I think people should send you any questions they have. I know a couple people might have sent some beforehand. But if anyone has any questions as they pop up, I'm going to try and save some time at the end. So please send those to Eleanor as
Yep.
they pop into your head.
And you can just use the chat function at the bottom toolbar.
All right. Thank you, Eleanor.
Mhm.
So next, we want to talk a little bit about user experience and information architecture. And this is the step that really comes after your discovery and your branding documents. Um, So what is information architecture? What is user experience? So information architecture, it's really the structure of your website. It's how the content's organized, it's how it's grouped, it's how it's labeled. And user experience is it's the lived experience of going through your website. How intuitive is it? How fast does it load? How does it feel? And how clearly does it guide the user through the website? So when we're working in the beginning stages of the website and we're building the information architecture, what you're going to find, the tools that we create, and I implore you to use, are sitemaps. And a sitemap can be as simple as an outline, a well thought out outline of what pages are going to be in the website. Thinking of how the user is going to go through the website, balanced with search engine optimization, what pages we want, and there's always needs to be that balance between SEO and user experience. Um, and again, I had a note here. The structure, we can go to our executive team, we can go to our engineers, and they can tell us something. They can tell us what's important, but it's not always the best way to organize information. We need to put our hat on as the persona we're trying to reach when we're building out our information architecture. So commonly our team is also going to do wireframes. This sort of blends between information architecture and user experience. Wireframes are low fidelity mockups. There's no images. It's just different, what I call content blocks for each page. And it helps us go through the website and sort of detail the user's journey through the website. What are the what's the journey the user going to take? How's the content going to be organized on the actual pages? Um, so those are very useful exercise when building a website. Menu prototypes. Okay, this is a huge one because if we've got a website with a lot of information, we got to find a way to organize it. And part of user experience is how many steps does the user have to take. So if you can be innovative with your menu to help the user find the information they're looking for and get through the website without taking a lot of steps, um, is something that's very important. So commonly there is an equal amount of concentration on the design of the navigation as there is to the design of the website. We've used um, a lot of mega menus, which is just, it's you pop up, we call it a hamburger, and it pops up the whole menu, and it just allows the user to select where they're trying to go very quickly if it's a website with a lot of information. And then you can really go down the rabbit hole and do user journey mapping. And So there's a lot of things to go there. Common pitfalls I see, and sometimes, we see with clients that come to us or guiding the team here. Um, Clever layouts that are hard to navigate. So a lot of creative agencies, branding agencies, web agencies, we do a lot of ideation. We like to come up with a lot of ideas. We like to do a lot of brainstorming. Sometimes they're great ideas and they're we get really excited about them. But do they lead to the best user experience? Is that animated footer with the cool animation, is that going to work well when a user's on mobile? Is the cool video that pops up above the header, is that really the right place for it? Um, so sometimes ideation with creative agencies and web agencies, can go too far and it can affect user experience. So we're always trying to balance, brand personality, ideation, and user experience. So another one, a poorly thought out homepage, just the journey going through the homepage. This is one we commonly see. Uh, it's like I'm going to a restaurant, right? Well, I have to scroll down to the bottom to reserve a table. A lot of users, the first thing they're trying to do when they go to a website is view the menu and reserve a table. So thinking out the journey through the homepage, and this is something we can all do very easily. Put our hat on, not as someone at the company who thinks this is how information should be conveyed, but actually as the user. Slow load times. We had a stat that talked about this. This is something that might seem intimidating, but we're going to talk about how we can make our websites faster. WordPress makes it extremely easy with all the great plugins. Now, the next one, too many steps for users. The thing that I thought about here, I think Amazon's patent for the one-click checkout has expired. But why did they have that patent? Why do they have and why did they patent it? Why did they try to make it one click for users to check out when they buy a product? It's because the fewer steps, the fewer friction, the better the user experience. So these are the common pitfalls we see with user experience and ones that I wanted to mention. Just one last note: test and adapt. Now, Google Analytics is great, and I talked about user journey mapping. I didn't go into it too much because I think one thing that is great is to if you have some data, website's been out there, go through Google Analytics. There's all sorts of mapping tools that show you how how they're coming into the website, how they're going through the website, what pages they're leaving. It's a wealth of information about the user journey and the user experience individuals are having when they navigate your site. So a lot of this can be intimidating a lot. So, once a year, go through those analytics, do the website initiative once a year, if you are doing a new website, have those analytics ready. What pages worked, what didn't work. Um, so that's the sort of thing that you want to do, and I think it's definitely worth mentioning. Psychology and the website. So a couple things here, and this line at the bottom I wrote kind of as I was going through these slides. Think about like these things, these psychology things in advertising and building websites. What does it say about us as humans? And I kind of wrote down what I think it says. Our brains, they seek shortcuts. We are wired to judge quickly. We're social creatures, tribal creatures. We follow social cues. Um, we don't want to be overwhelmed. We want things to be simple. Unfortunately, we crave validation, alignment, and connection, and those things really come in when we're talking about branding. So, psychology, evolutionary psychology, these are things that have evolved with us over time, and we see it with websites, we see it with social media. So, this is something that needs to eventually be a webinar in itself with psychology and websites and advertising. Um, so, taking these characteristics we have, the first thing I have on here is the F pattern is real. So I have a picture of the F pattern. When we scan websites, there's a certain way that we do it, and it's not everyone. There's a statistical distribution there. One thing researchers have found is that we look at websites kind of in an F pattern. We go up to the top, scan across, go down, kind of the middle, scan the body, and then scroll down. So when we're building a website, we need to know this. What's the most valuable part of the real estate in the site, and you can see that scan across the top is the navigation, and then usually there's a jumbotron and some body copy. So just knowing how users scan websites is very important and can help us help give us knowledge on design. So judge quickly. People make decisions in seconds. I had another quote I was going to put in here, and it was about the milliseconds it takes for people to make a decision about your company when they look at your website. I think it was it was a very low amount of time in milliseconds. They've already made a judgment on your company by viewing your website. So it's important that the design and it lives up to our brand, and our brand strategy is very solid, because when they land on the website, they're going to make decisions very quickly. And avoid overwhelm was a principle of human nature. I said we get overwhelmed quickly. Well, for me, I see this a lot in jumbotrons. The jumbotrons, you got your navigation, and then you have your jumbotrons, the second thing. Too many choices. We don't need a lot of choices. We want to guide users on a journey through the website. We don't want, if it's if we're in hospitality, we don't want on the jumbotron, the first thing we see on the website, you have the image, the nice branded text, and then we have all these buttons. Well, we don't need 6 different buttons bringing users to different places. We really want to think, where do we want the user to go? We want to simplify it. And that's why when you see in direct response advertising, they're all using landing pages. There's nowhere to go. There's no decisions to make. There's one decision to make. So avoiding overwhelming users is very important, and really think through, limiting, focusing your messaging, limiting the amount of actions, and really guiding users on a journey. In our last webinar, we talked a little bit about social proof. It just goes back to our human nature of being tribal, being social. On the websites, a lot of times we will use testimonials. Testimonials are, I think even the landing page for this webinar had a testimonial on it. Testimonials are very powerful, because we seek that validation from peers. It's just something very ingrained in us. So the next one, urgency, scarcity. these are really advertising tactics that work really well as a branding and web agency. We're always blending this carefully with the client's brand, but think about urgency and scarcity as something you can possibly employ. Fear of missing out. That's where that concept comes from. But think of that tactic as something you can employ, but really balance it with your brand. And then I have reinforced the user's identity. I mean, the copy really needs to speak to the user. They need to, get that validation. They need to get that connection, and they need to feel aligned with your brand, with your site, with your copy. Um, so I went through that quickly, just looking at where we are with time. But I think this will eventually be a whole webinar in itself. So just to give you a little bit of a taste there. So I was going to just do this about on-page SEO, but I'll just talk about what's on, off, and technical. All extremely important. On-page SEO is literally just the page on your website. It's focusing on SEO tactics on that page that search engines will read. It's going to rank it better. Off-page SEO is signals outside of your website that lead to authority building for your site. So that might be maybe you have directory listings out there, or maybe you have a news article with a link back to your site, or other websites, maybe affiliates pointing to your site. So that is called SEO. Could be your social, it could be the amount of reviews you have. Technical SEO is just within the search engine rankings. User experience is important, but they're also looking at are there any errors? Are there crawling errors on your site? Does your site load fast? These are part of the algorithm for SEO. So when it comes to on-page SEO, we want to have strong meta titles, meta descriptions for each page. We want to be using HTML structure, which is bulleted lists, headers. You want to use. There is a structure to HTML. Each page has one H1, which is the main header. It's just like a Word doc, right? We have H1, H2, H3. Google and search engines want to see information organized this way. Because that's what users want. That's the easiest way to digest information. So having a strong HTML structure and just making sure that the keywords are in the copy, but going into my next point, written for users, written for people, not just stuffed for search engine optimization. Internal links going back to other pages, used to see breadcrumbs a lot. If you don't know, look that up. It was kind of like a navigation on the top of the page, which you could go back to the page you were previously on. But internal linking in a website is going to help for SEO because it's good with user experience, but also tells search engines which pages are important. And then technical. Does the site load fast? Is it mobile friendly? Is it coded well? These are things that Google is gonna look at. Um, so within WordPress, there's a lot of plugins that can help us with on-page SEO. The one that we recommend is Yoast SEO plugin. You've used it for probably a decade. It's going to score each page on your website, and you're going to go through and fill out your titles, your meta descriptions, make sure your permalink is good. You want to make sure you have your images are saved with a good file name. They have good alt tags in them. So those are the things that we want to make sure that we're going to be doing when we're talking about on-page SEO. Technical SEO, we're going to hit on that when we talk about performance. And off-page SEO, look up. There's some getting reviews. We want to get reviews, and there's some good tools out there. Yext is one that will make sure all your directory listings out there are filled out correctly, and you have some good directories. So, I want to just talk a little bit on conversion and lead capture. It's important to have a really clear call to action. What a call to action is, it's just a piece of content that asks the user to take a next step. And Eleanor, I'm going to pick on you here. At the last minute, Eleanor's been working on the Acres of Wildlife website, and one call to action I love is this the footer. I love it because it's just it really brings in the brand personality. It's got the great brand palette, and I think it's in a very natural place in the footer. And I kind of have a weird thing of about well designed footers. So here, Eleanor and the team made a great call to action to, book a tent site at Acres of Wildlife in a really cool way that works with the brand in a very natural place. So a call to action is just a call for the user to take a next step to do something. It might be download a white paper, contact, sign up for a webinar, um, and excuse me. It's important to have them well placed on the website. And with calls to action, we want to offer value, and that might be, we just worked with a manufacturer in Chicago. We wrote a series of white papers uh, on their product and how it related to data centers. Try to make this content as valuable as possible for data center architects, data center engineers. So when they were on the data center page, hey, we want to get your information. There's a valuable download they can take. That's a very effective call to action. So we can, one, offer them value, get their information, so then we can nurture them over time. And just another thing, like the more friction you put in a form, the less lead capture you're going to get. And sometimes that's okay. If we have a big volume of leads, we we might be a little bit more picky on how many fields are in our capture form. We might really want people to spend the time to, if we got a lot of leads, we might really want them to fill out and sort of qualify themselves to us over just, name, email, organization, phone. So the more friction you add to a form, the less time it's going to be filled out. And generally, we're trying to add less friction so we can get the user's contact information. Um, Place CTAs in places where the decisions are naturally going to happen. And that's why I love this footer. It's, we've gone through the homepage, we've been engaged, thinking about where to go next. We're ready to book. Well, Eleanor and the team just put this really great call to action right in the footer so we can take the next step. Think about making landing pages tailored to your campaigns. That might be with your CRM, might be a tool. Like we use Go High Level that helps you make funnels, or there's Click Funnels. There's a whole bunch of tools out there. There's HubSpot, Salesforce. Or you might just make a custom WordPress template, for all your pay-per-click campaigns, that is just tailored to the campaign. So you can do it both ways. But, if you are running an ad campaign, or you are going to be running an ad campaign when you're building your website, you want to make sure that you're either going to use a tool that makes a dedicated landing page, or you have a template on your website specific for landing pages. And then always, it's important if you are trying to get leads, if it's not just an exercise in branding your website, it's important. Get that CRM, have the form go into the CRM, have the marketing automation set up. Um, Very important to do. Um, so I'm a WordPress geek. I'm a techie. I like to get into servers. I like to play around with them. So some things that I've learned over the years. We've talked about fast load times and why they're important. It's important for user experience. All the search engines are looking at it. It's going to lead to better conversions. So how do we do that? Well, I have images, code, and plugins, and this is great. Images, something I see, and marketing coordinators out there, you're guilty of this. Maybe you will compress the image, but you don't resize the image. We can go to the site, we can inspect it, and we can see what size the image is actually displayed. So the first step in optimizing an image is sizing it correctly. If it's only ever going to be displayed at 1200 pixels wide, well, let's not put a 2100 pixel image there. Um, let's put let's resize it to 1200 pixels, and that's the first step. And you can save, a 1 megabyte image. We're already down to 160, right? So then you're going to want to use a WordPress plugin, or you're going to want to use a tool that's going to then compress that image. So that's images huge way to um, make your website load faster by just resizing them properly and compressing them. And while you're doing it, let's name them properly too. And then while we're putting them in, let's put the right alt tag in. Um, when it comes to code, two things: there's plugins that can do this for you. Your hosting service might do this for you. Like a WP Engine will do this for you. We do this ourselves, but you want to use a service or a plugin that's going to minimize your code, minify your code. That's what it's called. We're going to get rid of all the codes written a lot of times for humans to read. Well, computers don't need all the junk that humans do to read it. So minifying is getting rid of all that junk. So we can use hosting, and we can use plugins to minify our code, get rid of all that junk that computers don't need and we'll speed it up. Um, and we can also compress our code. So that's just like compressing an image or compressing a file. We can really compress this code down. And also we can get rid of a lot of code. And this is a problem with premium themes is there's a lot of code. There's a lot of code that's not even on your site. It's pointing to other websites out there on the internet to get code. And all those things take a long time, a longer time for the page to render. So optimizing, minifying, compressing code. Plugins, just reduce the amount of plugins. Get rid of the old plugins you don't need. Make sure you're vetting your plugins. Um, reducing the plugins is going to reduce the bloat that you have. Use very high quality hosting. You're going to, there's many out there. I mentioned WP Engine. There's Flywheel. I think SiteGround's another good one. You want to use a high quality, scalable hosting service. You also want to use a service that you can cache your website in the server. So what that means is it's going to store a lot of the website information in the server RAM over, in the hard drive of the server itself. There are plugins on WordPress that can do this. And there's also servers that will, going through your server, look this up if you can do it. But you want to cache as much of your website files as possible, and that's gonna help the website load faster. Keep your WordPress core updated. Keep your theme updated. Keep your plugins updated. And when we're doing all these things, we want to make a backup first. And there's a lot of tools that will help us do this. But here for our clients, we're updating quarterly. If you have a bigger site, you're going to want to update these things once a month. And that's, going to help with security and performance. Something that we do is if when a new PHP comes out, updating the server to a new version of PHP. So all these things really help with security and performance. Design with growth in mind. This kind of plays to more of your server. Make sure that if you're using a server that maybe it's cloud based, so it will scale with you. These are important things to think about. And then the last we touched on caching, performance monitoring. Don't be afraid to go into your server and look at some of these performance monitoring tools. They're there. So look at, what's your CPU usage, what's your RAM usage, all these things. You can go through and see, is the server maxed out? Is there something in the website that's maxing it out? So here I'm throwing a lot at you. I'm just trying to get you thinking, okay? I'm trying to get you to hear some of these words. So you might go out and investigate these a little bit more, or you might hit me or Eleanor up just to learn a little bit more. So threw a lot at you, really with all of this. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cough. Eleanor, I don't know if any questions came in, but before we kind of wrap up with some takeaways, um,
Yeah, we actually did have a few questions come through. Let me just find those. Yeah, so I'm just gonna kind of spitball them at you, okay, Peter?
definitely.
Alrighty. So Greg asked, do you have any tips for how to structure a site that serves two different audiences? We have both homeowners and commercial clients, and they're completely separate personas.
Okay, so that's the information architecture and user experience challenge. That's common. I think, we've worked with a couple of local service providers and let's say maybe a landscaper, maybe they plow the jet port. Um, but they also work with, the homeowner in an affluent area, and that's a really distinct audience. Um, I know we've also worked with a horticultural company who had growers that were from different industries, forestry, hydroponics. So I think one great way to do that, and you have to kind of balance it with not having too many steps in the process, is maybe have something where, I don't know, can they toggle who they are? Can we ask them a question who they are, and then the site changes? Because we can do that in WordPress. I mean, someone can self-select and say I'm a homeowner, and we can easily just modify with a different menu, maybe slightly different colors or something like that. So I mean, I would implore you to have some fun with it. I mean, can we have a toggle in the super header that we can toggle between residential or commercial? Have some fun with it, or can we have users select, what type they are, and then have the website automatically change. WordPress makes this really easy if you can get in there and modify the templates. What do you think, Eleanor? Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I love being able to toggle between two parts of a business within the website. Separate copy, similar voice, but different copy. And it really showcases the fact that there are two distinct parts of a company. We've done that for a few different of our a few clients just this year. And, we have one that's between employment and employers, and it makes it really easy to navigate, and you can kind of get a really good idea of who's coming to your website in terms of audience. So I love having that option.
No, that is that the Mainworks website that we're working on?
Yep, it's the Mainworks. So it's partially a job board, and it's partially helping employers figure out if it's a good option for them.
No, that's a great point.
Yep.
Were there any other questions?
Yeah, we have two more.
Okay.
All right. So Julie asks, if we only have budget to fix one thing, where do you recommend we start?
One thing. I think it depends on your personality or what's your skill set. If you're like me and you can dig into a server and you like to play around, performance for sure. Some of these things are easy to easier to do, especially if you're a little bit technical. If you're more copy and design, I'd look at the homepage and the user experience going down that homepage. Are we guiding the users on the correct journey going down that homepage? Is it logical from a user's perspective, or is it more logical from our executive team, our engineers? Is the order of scrolling down our homepage, is it driven by an internal department and not what the user is actually looking for? So I would go through just your homepage. Don't be overwhelmed with the whole site. Just go through the homepage. Is the copy written in brand voice? Does the design have our brand personality? And does the flow make sense from the user's perspective? And I think that
Yeah.
might be a way that's not overwhelming.
Yeah. And I would also, at the top of the year, most companies kind of reevaluate their goals for the year. And I would kind of start there. Does your website meet the overall goals of your company? Are you trying to increase sales? Are you trying to increase leads? Like what is the point of the website? And make sure that it, works for you in this case. And start there. That's what I would recommend as well.
I love that. And something we found is like we've gone through this cycle since COVID, and there was a push for recruitment. And now we're seeing like a push for sales. People,
Mhm.
we've got the employees we need finally. Now we're ready to grow or just get caught up with sales. So that goal can shift with time.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, and last one. This is from Nick. Do you have a discovery questionnaire or framework you use when meeting with stakeholders, and would you be willing to share it?
That's a good question for you, Eleanor, I think. Would we,
Yeah,
I think we'd be willing to share that.
yeah, I think so. So we do have a questionnaire that we send out prior to a kickoff. In that questionnaire, we ask about sort of everything. So we ask about timeline, we ask about design goals, goals of the website, functionality, sort of all of these important touch points that we get into during our kickoff meeting. And we find that that foundational knowledge kind of helps guide us when we're asking questions because, something I say all the time is this is something that we do every day. And this is something that most companies do once every, 2 to 5 years. So, this is something we do a lot, and we want to make sure that we're asking the right questions early on. And that questionnaire proves to be really helpful every time.
Yeah, I think that I'm glad that was asked because I think that's will be very valuable for those people who might have in-house teams and have to have this intimidating meeting with the executive team themselves and flesh through some of this stuff. So I think we should send that out.
Yeah.
Um, all right, just to wrap it up, we've gone past how long we normally like to do this, but this was a lot of information to throw at you. Just some takeaways, for people who are a little overwhelmed and they need to digest this, they need to watch the replay, they need to research some of this stuff themselves. What can you do that's not overwhelming? Um, I just wrote some notes down here. Clarify your homepage headline. To me, this is a branding exercise. Let's get some brand personality and some brand voice into that first headline or that some piece of content on the homepage. Let's make sure let's take some time and inject that brand personality and voice into a headline if we don't have it. And I think this was to Julie's question, but what I just recommended to Julie, like go through the homepage from the user's perspective, think about the user flow going through, make changes to those content blocks. Those are, what we call on a website the blocks you go through on a site. Think through them, think through their design, think through the user experience, um, and make some changes just to the homepage. Don't overwhelm yourself at first. Um, add clear calls to action. You saw that beautiful call to action our team did for Acres of Wildlife. Think through where are the natural spots to have call to actions. What do we have any guides or valuable information if it's appropriate for our brand to put in key spots of the website. On page SEO, I want you to download the Yoast SEO plugin and just start going through the pages and getting your score up. Fill out those meta titles, those meta descriptions. Make sure the images have the right, a decent file name and alt text. Um, Bonus points if you want to go out and use a directory like EX to get some of that off-page SEO going. Another bonus points if you want to set up your Google Search Console and look through it for errors. If you have any forms on your site, I want you to go through and see if there's fields you don't need. Um, or maybe, your sales team's smaller and your problem is not volume of leads, you need more qualified leads. I want you to maybe think about adding more fields to your website, more fields to your forms. So reduce the friction if you need more leads, less fields, increase if you need to qualify leads more. And then, go through for performance. I want you to go through the website, get rid of any plugins you're not using, and think about resizing your images and compressing them. There's a lot of plugins out there. We do this all in house, so we don't really use plugins for this, but I did write one down. I think it's called Optimize WP. It will do a lot of it for yourself. It's from Updraft, who brought us Updraft Plus, which is a very good plugin we used to use to back up our sites. So maybe use a plugin to optimize these images, compress these images, and just go through and do some performance things. Um, Eleanor, you want to wrap up and say where people can find us, or
Yeah, absolutely. So you can obviously find us at our website, breastbound.com, or you can reach out to Peter directly at the email on the screen, or my email is just eleanor@brassbound.com. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Obviously, if you want a replay of this to share it out with your team. But yeah, I love working with WordPress. I think it's super easy. It's super intuitive. And once you have the independence to be able to make changes to the website yourself, like when you do redefine a goal for the website, it really gives you that amazing independence to be able to make those edits. But like I said, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
yeah, be on the lookout for future webinars. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And I think our team will be setting out the replay, so look for it there. We made it before the hour. We didn't keep it to the 40 minutes. Um, so apologize for that, but I think it was a lot of really good information, and thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.